Jim Jones was never better than Nas. Jim Jones will never be better than Nas. And this is coming from somebody that's not a Nas fan. I love Dipset. I love the Diplomats. I love Bird Gang. But we not about to start rewriting history because Jim Jones got confidence.
I'm in the game still rapping at a high capacity. If Nas wants to smoke, come in the booth. I will rap
He don't want
circles
no
around.
smoke. He enjoying that 150 million, 200 million. He
Okay then, so then leave me alone while I'm on the field.
You was effing with him. He wasn't bothering you.
Know who Nas is. If he's 22, he's born in 03.
Not all of them.
Jim Jones has a history of voicing his opinions. However, he did more than just do an interview when he appeared on Shannon Sharpe's Nightcap show. He ignited the culture. He made one of the most audacious statements hip-hop has heard in a long time as soon as he sat down. It's claimed to have greater clout than Nez.
I never got to, see Nas. I never got to sit down and have a conversation with Nas and things like that. I had called you about it and things like that. That was like still one of the people that I never got to have a conversation throughout my history of rap and things like that. I think I would love to have a conversation with Nas. I wouldn't know if he knows it, but Nas was one of my all-time favorite rappers coming up and things like that.
I've heard you say that.
Since the barbecue and things like that. Like he really put the whole dope boy rap, crack hustler, get fresh rap into perspective before anybody.
Now, that remark seems crazy to anyone familiar with the rap game. Nez isn't your typical rapper. He is a legend from Queensbridge, the creator of Illmatic, and a performer who defined a genre and continues to produce Grammy-winning work in his 50s. Thus, there was immediate turmoil when Jim made the decision to compare himself to Nez. All social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok became battlefields overnight. Fans began posting jokes on timelines, bringing up old Jim Jones videos, bringing up wiretaps, and discussing whether he had lost all sense of reality.
Recently saw a clip on Instagram where a young kid was comparing you to Nas and saying that you got
that's my young boy.
Big hits.
He's wild.
Yo, he looked to you. He learned how to wear the BB Simon belt from you. He got his swag. Like, how crazy is that? Because in my era, you know what I'm saying, Nas is like a god.
In my era.
While some were laughing, others were furious. Others simply couldn't understand why Jim would go there. However, it wasn't Nas that had the most outrageous response. 50 Cent was the one who did it, and his actions made this whole situation into a controversy instead of just a hot take. You see, 50 Cent's response wasn't typical of rappers. No slick joke on stage, no Instagram captions making fun of Jim, no rapid disc record.
But Nas' first record, The Barbecue, came out when I was in 11th grade.
Yes.
So Nas was my idol when I was young. Like you did, came to dressing, the wordplay, the music, everything. I was a superior Nas fan. Period. I'd never take that away from him. But then as I got in the game, you got to realize that your rivals would be idols, and not to take anything away from that, I developed my own style and my own lane that these kids start to gravitate towards the same way I gravitated towards Nas when I was younger and things like that. It's a whole different.
Rather, he took a single, cold, premeditated action. When he shared a transcript of a federal court on Instagram, the public quickly realized what he was doing. It was the notorious document from the Tekashi 699 trade trial that made reference to Individual 1, a shadowy figure associated with the person who supposedly approved Tekashi during the case. Even though Jim Jones was never accused or verified, fans had long conjectured that he was the one.
Nas, and I don't care what nobody say. I know I made a little boo-boo when we talk about the sales and all this type of shit. I don't feel like getting into that rhetoric about where I started and where he started.
Well, you said that bullshit.
But listen, Nas was nice when I was in high school. When I was in 10th grade, Nas came out. Nas was dope. We appreciated him. He had a little...
Years. The rumor circulated via message boards, blogs, and barbershops. However, up until now, no one with a loud voice has really pressed it. That receipt was taken out of the vault by 50 Cent like a poker game's Joker card. Jim's assertion that he was more powerful than Nas abruptly lost all significance. The topic of discussion turned to whether Jim had any hidden secrets that he was unable to disclose.
Nas always came up second to Jay and DMX and all these other people. Like, he
Ain't
never
no
had
shame in that. There
he
a lot
never
of
had-
folks
he
came up
never had
second to
that
Tom
type of-
Brady.
He never had that type of influence on us, except for his first album. I already told you, I used to want to dress like Nas because he had a lot of fresh clothes that the hustlers used to wear, and we used to see him on TV. He had one of the illest albums of all time. And then in high school when he had the barbecue and shit like that. So I'm a real fan of Nas, but he kind of lost me after the movie Belly and shit.
That's 50 Cent's power. Instead of checkers, he plays chess. Additionally, he is well aware of when to pull the trigger to make someone appear helpless. Here's the problem, though. Jim Jones and Nas have a long-standing feud. It goes back more than 2 decades. In 2002, Nas went off during a Hot 97 rant when he dissed Cameron and labeled his record crap. That sparked a conflict with Dipset and Jim. Cam's devoted soldier immediately jumped into the fray.
50-year-olds in their panties because I said I'm better
It
than
don't
Nas.
matter.
Look at you. Look at you.
Nobody,
Ain't all in your,
ain't
all in
nobody
your
from
film.
Dipset gonna take
Shannon,
you
that
over
shirt-
Nas.
that
Nobody
shirt
from the
too-
Diplomats
that
but
shirt-
you.
That shirt too tight.
Hold on,
Yeah,
Jimmy.
yeah,
Hold
with
on.
Nas.
That shirt too
Hold on,
tight.
hold on.
That
Jimmy,
shirt
Jimmy,
too
Jimmy.
tight. You want to go back to I really mean it? I really mean it started. We could go back to
No, but
the
I'm just
history,
saying,
bro.
for you to
What began as brief subliminal messages quickly became personal. Jim became so furious that he threatened to slap Nez's skull, a degree of disdain that went beyond music. The two groups then exchanged interviews, mixtapes, and shots. Furthermore, the tension persisted throughout. The most outrageous aspect was that Jim was actually giving Nas his roses years later. He was hailing him as a legend just a year ago. No smooth shade, no sneak disses. However, in 2025, Jim abruptly changes the course of events by claiming that he has not only overtaken Nas in importance, but is still important. That would be equivalent to claiming that you surpass Michael Jordan in basketball or outwork Jay-Z in business. Simply fails to land. Not only were people offended, but they were also laughing at how irrational it sounded. Jim made the decision to double down at that point. He delivered the same bomb on Fat Joe and Jedica's podcast. When Joe offered him a chance, Jim didn't back down. He leaned completely in. Then Shannon Sharpe's show came along, and everything went totally south. When Shannon immediately brought up those remarks about Nez, Jim didn't back down. On the contrary, he became even more adamant. Nas doesn't move the streets like I do, he said, twisting his admission that Nas was fly stylish and legendary. His angle was that, claimed to have more sway on the younger generation and daily cultural influence. Then, in the middle of a hip-hop dispute, Jim began making fun of Shannon's attire, which made it much more absurd. As everyone else on the internet saw it happen, Chad Akasenko sat on the side and laughed. What began as an interview descended into a verbal altercation in which Shannon snapped back, saying, "This is the biggest podcast you've ever been on," while Jim accused Shannon of exploiting him for influence.
Playing at a high level.
Hey,
You better check my record, you heard?
jumping up and
I'm
down.
still playing
You
at
need
a
to
high
go back
level.
and get Jada. Jada
I'm
been
rapping
cooked on.
I'm rapping at a high level. You better check my stats, bro. I will
we
run
not
circles
denying
around
that.
Nas rapping right. I will run circles around Nas rapping right now. Right now, I will run.
Put his
I will
microphone
run
up. Let me take my mic off.
I will
Give me
run
a mic.
Saturn around Nas right now.
It wasn't about Nas anymore at that point. Jim and Shannon were fighting like they were in a squabble. Fans, however, weren't duped. They saw that Jim was avoiding the true problem. People on the internet interpreted his attempt to switch to fitness as him running from the heat, even though he challenged Shannon to outlift and outrain him. Jim didn't say a word, but 50 Cent's one small Instagram post sat there silently. The internet was rocked by that one paper, each individual one, and comments were flooding in. Shannon stood up for Nas harder than Fat Joe or Jadakiss ever did. One admirer even remarked, "Consider that." Rappers who had shared the mic with an NFL Hall of Famer were less ardent in their defense of Nas's reputation. Even worse, someone found an old video of Nas making fun of Jim Jones on stage years ago, dismissing him and making him seem inconsequential. That video was now becoming viral once more. making Jim look foolish in front of a younger audience that might not have even been aware of it. Once the receipts reappear, they remain there forever because the internet never forgets. Jim's reputation was suffering by the time the transcript and the video began to circulate together. What was meant to be his grandiose display of power over Nez instead became the culture scrutinizing him. It's also difficult to recover when 50 Cent and Shannon Sharpe both clown you at the same moment. One thing became abundantly evident in the first round of this story. Jim Jones had chosen a battle that was completely out of his control. He appeared to be spinning, and the streets were consuming him rather than gleaming.
Buy a bag of your clothes, big fella. You too big, man.
You talk about you in the gym. Now you want to get me? You want me to see me in the gym?
Oh, we can do that.
Since you like to talk that ish, now come see me in the gym.
We talking about working out.
Come see me in the gym.
We talking about working out or strength? What we talking about? Working out or strength?
Work however you want to do it.
We talking about
since you got money.
If we talking about
put your money where your mouth is.
So you talking about working out? I burn you. You talking about working out? I burn you. You talking about working out or strength? Because you probably can lift a lot more than me.
Whatever.
You're bigger than me. You're probably stronger than me.
Whatever.
But if you talk about working out, I'll burn you.
This ain't what you do. This ain't what you want. You are doing good when you talk about Nas and Jada. You don't want to see this.
The internet came to a deeper realization once the chaos surrounding that crazy Shannon Sharpe interview subsided. Jim Jones did more than just incite conflict. Old wounds that never healed were reopened by him. That single label wasn't only a trivial detail. It was directly related to the notorious Tekashi 69 N9's trading trial in 2018, among the most chaotic federal cases in contemporary hip-hop. People claim to have heard Jim's voice in the background when the prosecutors played those wiretaps. In court, according to reports, the tape shows someone authorizing Tekashi's disciplinary action for snitching, even though the feds never explicitly mentioned names. That enigmatic person quickly became associated with Jim in popular culture. The rumors persisted even though there were never any charges or proof. No matter how hard you try to ignore it, this type of gossip persists in barbershops, group chats, and blogs for eternity. Jim skirted by it for years without confronting it directly. However, he never forgets 50 Cent. He waited for the ideal opportunity to utilize the receipt sitting on it in the safe like a weapon. And 50 fired the document into the public eye like a sniper as soon as Jim started talking about Nas. Deadly but silent. That's what caused the entire situation to be so disastrous. Jim aimed to center the discussion on influence and who possessed greater cultural clout. However, after that transcript surfaced, the discussion of influence shifted to Jim being made fun of for avoiding federal shadows. There were memes everywhere. Images of Jim with a unique one stamped over his forehead are being posted online. Others are creating sketches out of the wiretapped audio by remixing it. Jim appeared to be trying too hard to change his tale while ignoring the stack of receipts against him, rather than a street general with unrivaled pull. Furthermore, perception is crucial in hip-hop. Nobody is more aware of that than 50. He targets not just your bars, but also your reputation, integrity, and the basis upon which you stand. He is feared in this culture because of this. Even though he isn't the loudest anymore, his moves are brutal and accurate. Nas, on the other hand, remains silent and, to be honest, didn't need to. That is the distinction between desperation and legacy. Nas, who is in his 50s, continues to sell out arenas and release critically and popularly acclaimed albums like King's Disease and Magic, while Team is switching between podcasts to demonstrate his continued relevance. He is discreetly creating a billionaire blueprint, stacking business deals and investing. It was an embarrassing contrast, was repeatedly brought up by fans. As you argue with Shannon Sharpe, how are you more powerful than a man packing arenas? That became the story. Jim appeared to be pleading for attention, but Nas was too large to even notice the shade. After that, things became uglier. Reporters say Jim's name really came up in relation to the 9 trades during the trial, again, according to old Shade Room updates that have surfaced. Legally, nothing stuck, but perception is unfair. Anything that is linked to your name on the internet follows you around. Nobody is more familiar with this game than 50 Cent. He manipulates perspective like a master manipulator. He then twisted the knife by reposting an old meme that he had previously deleted with the caption, "Say, it ain't so, Jimmy," which alluded to the reason why the feds didn't bring Jim in. That goes beyond simple trolling. Psychological warfare is what that is. He didn't have to call Jim out by name or spit out a single bar. The internet did all the harm for him with just a slight prod. The problem is that Jim has consistently sought recognition as more than Cameron's right-hand guy. He has battled for years to establish himself as a boss, an innovator, and a leader in his own right. To be honest, he's had his moments. His time with We Fly High, his influence on the style of Dipset, and even his most recent stint in New York with drill beats. Moments, however, do not equate to legacy. What Nas has is a legacy. When 50 took over the world with his hit song Get Rich or Die Trying, he created a legacy. Jim's attempt to elevate himself by stepping on Nes's shoulders only served to highlight their differences. It seems as though he was searching for headlines rather than altering culture. And at one point, former NFL veteran Shannon Sharpe, who wasn't even a rapper, defended Nas more vehemently than most MCs. The visuals deteriorated. Athletes had to intervene and label him insane since it seemed like the rap community was too exhausted to check the gym. That was well received by fans. The comment sections turned into vicious battlegrounds. "This is the reason Jimmy isn't untouchable," an admirer remarked. 50 always knows when to press play on somebody's downfall, another person remarked. Jim's personal social media became a battlefield as a result of the constant barrage of comments left on his posts. It was like salt on the wound when the old Nas clip from years ago, in which Nas dismissed Jim on stage, began to play again. In 2025, the Dusty incident that many people had forgotten abruptly became a popular shame. In HD, karma returned. Jim attempted to defend himself at the same moment. He began sharing videos of himself working out, lifting weights, and flexing in an attempt to portray himself as an unbreakable street soldier. However, it desperate rather than respectful. People make jokes that he wasn't prepping for the rap game, but rather for a prison sentence. That's where perception gets tough. Every action you take is turned into a joke once the internet determines your story. Jim was unable to get rid of it. It was being cooked from all sides. On the sidelines, fans, media, and even artists who chose not to participate were silently chuckling. 50 Cent remained mute during it all. No podcasts, interviews, or back and forth. Only that one eerie Instagram post, lingering there like an unsettling ghost. It was an expert lesson in how to crush someone without exerting much effort. Jim's already precarious credibility took a more severe blow. One thing became clear from the entire situation. You had better hope that no one has receipts stacked against you when you're playing the game of clout chasing, 'cause no podcast, tirade, or gym session will be able to save you once those receipts hit the timeline. It was now abundantly evident that the Nas remarks were only the catalyst. The main theme of this entire spectacle was the long-simmering hostility between 50 Cent and Jim Jones. These two were never close or allies. And whenever the chance arose, 50 always came up with clever ways to make fun of Jim. However, things were different this time. This wasn't only a joke or a little jab. It was deliberate, personal, and intended to completely append Jim. Fans were also able to sense it. There was a lot of speculation. How much does 50 actually know? But why does he insist on bringing up those papers whenever Jim yells? The internet became a massive detective board, examining previously recorded interviews, unearthing video, and even reliving the unsettling incident in which 50 remarked, "I'm afraid for my life," during an interview. People also stated that he was referring to snakes in the profession, like Jim. The entire story took on a darker tone as a result of such conjecture. Rap clout wasn't the only factor here. had to do with survival, reputation, and the wounds. From the streets, Jim, on the other hand, appeared cornered. His tone changed from one of confidence to defensiveness. He went live on Instagram, pacing the floor, shouting into the camera, and speaking as though he had to prove himself to an audience that was no longer paying attention. Every post, outburst, and flex attempt simply made him appear more unsteady. He was ridiculed by many who thought he sounded more like he was getting ready for a jailhouse workout than carrying on his musical heritage. And that's the actual issue. It is nearly impossible to rise above being reduced to online jokes. Jim's reputation, which had always been built on toughness and street cred, was abruptly marred by flaws. Instead of discussing whether he had greater influence than Nas, people began discussing whether his career was in decline. Additionally, Jim's timing couldn't have been worse. Nas remained unharmed, standing tall as the legend who didn't have to speak a word while he fumbled to defend himself. He continued to book tour dates, play in front of thousands of fans singing his hits, and release music that was praised by reviewers. Nia's silence spoke louder than any trash song ever could. It demonstrated the distinction between vying for attention and gaining respect. Furthermore, 50 Cent continued to do what he always does best: be calm, remain calculating, and let his one move speak louder than any tirade on a podcast. His Instagram post turned out to be the story's emblem. Evidence that quiet can sometimes be more powerful than bars. Even 50's timing was praised by fans who said things like he waited years just to bury Jim with one receipt. That's not checkers, it's chess. The fact that outsiders began to appear more powerful than rappers in support of Nas made it even more repulsive. Hall of Fame tight end Shannon Sharpe put more pressure on Jim than most MCs would have dared. It's Chad. Ocasino appeared to be seeing a live train accident unfold in front of him, even though his role was to simply relax and enjoy the moment. On its own, the video of Shannon exclaiming, "This is the biggest podcast you've ever been on," went viral. It brought the ridiculousness to light. Jim couldn't even defeat a retired football star in a debate, so how could he believe he was superior? To Nas, the crowd wasn't understanding, and the optics were harsh. Then the meme avalanche hit. TikTok was playing an old video of N